Hi, everybody. Welcome to our show. This is Kindness Beyond the Veil, where we'll look at supernatural topics like ghosts, the afterlife, psychic ability, UFOs, starseeds and earth angels, magic and mysticism, but not with fear and loathing everywhere. There's positive and even loving sides to these topics, and that's the light we'll shine on for this show. This is your host, Chip Reichenthal. I was kind of thrust into these curiosities in 1979 when my best friend through childhood came to me at the moment of his death, and I had to know why. Back then, you couldn't talk about that stuff without getting a freak label, so I was pretty much on my own looking into these mysteries early on. Answers would lead to more questions and side realms like magic, stars and planets, energy and physics, and lately, starseeds and earth angels. But I found there's no good and evil in an animal kingdom, no good and evil in a plant kingdom. I've never had a negative encounter with ghosts or the dead, now almost 40 years into this, and there simply doesn't seem to be many looks into these fields without all the fear and loathing. Isn't there enough of that in life? Well, we're going to steer away from that, look at the good people and these topics. Every week I get to highlight my heroes in these fields for you, introduce you to them, even if you knew all about them. There is kindness beyond the veil. I've seen a lot of it. There's answers to be found on the kinder side of things. And if there's light on the other side, we'll bring it into this side as well. And benevolence, empathy, compassion, the kinder side of science and phenomenon, the kindness beyond the veil. I'm your host, Chip Reichenthal. We're so glad you're joining us. Come on in. Welcome.
Yeah, we indeed welcome you today. Hey, we're really thrilled and excited to have y'all with us. And, of course, we welcome you with open arms to Kindness Beyond the Veil. This is your host, Chip Reichenthal, and we've got an electrifying show for y'all today, beloved listeners, and a phenomenal guest for you all today as we are talking UFOs, interstellar travel, and the paranormal as well, with our good friend and honored guest, Tom Conwell. Oh, we love Tom. It's great to have Tom back with us. He has an awesome background. Tom Conwell has been an electronic technician for over 42 years with the U.S. Navy and with Honeywell, also a biomedical engineer and a meteorologist, and brings a very unique and very broad knowledge of electronics and physics to his work and how that works into the paranormal and UFO sightings across the country and around the world. He's got some amazing books out, including Tom Conwell's brand new book. We're really excited about that. His brand new book is Earthquakes and UFOs. Their link is not what you think. I'm going to say that again so you can look it up because it's awesome. Thomas W. Conwell, author name, Earthquakes and UFOs. Their link is not what you think. And you know we'll be talking about that. Plus, we've got Tom's well-renowned series, They Are Here, volumes 1, 2, and 3. Each details UFO sightings in the eastern, western, and central parts of the United States. And the mind-provoking book called Going Interstellar, Problems First. That's so far my favorite, but I haven't read the new one yet. Well, it asks some mighty powerful questions regarding interstellar travel, and not just for us as a species, but for extraterrestrial species as well. It provokes a lot of really wonderful thought. So we've got a lot to talk about with our honored guest, Tom Conwell, today. And I also get to fulfill a promise to one of our beloved listeners, a fellow named Michael Garum. He's been asking me a lot of questions regarding the role of electricity in paranormal investigations, some pretty deep questions, and there's nobody better on the planet that I can think of when it comes to addressing the role of electricity proper, and not just the EMFs or electromagnetic frequencies that are so commonly talked about in the paranormal community, than today's guest, Thomas W. Conwell is the author name. Tom Conwell is my buddy. And even with the EMFs, Tom has some very unique takes. So it's a good day to be alive, an even better day to be joining us here on Kindness Beyond the Veil with me, your host, Chip Reichenthal, and the always fascinating Tom Conwell joining us today. And we'll bring Tom on in just a moment, even though he's sitting with us. We just wanted to keep you up to date on a couple of things. First, our show, Kindness Beyond the Veil, as we are back with brand new episodes now and a brand new feel with our brand new home network. We're on Trim Radio. Trim, keep it nice and trim. Hey, see, speaking of trim, I got my Kindness Beyond the Veil shirt on. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Yeah, how exciting is that, right? But Trim Radio is WTRMradio.com, WTRMradio.com. Did I mention WTRMradio.com? That's Trim Network. We're live every Monday from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Plus, you can watch us live as well on Facebook.com/WTRM Radio Network. WTRM Radio Network on Facebook. And the Kindness Beyond the Veil Facebook page, too. So that's Facebook.com/Kindness Beyond the Veil. And the Trim Radio Network Facebook page is WTRMRadioNetwork.com for Facebook. Plus, we also have merchandise. I got my shirt on, man. Got to write a side. Got my shirt on. You can get Kindness Beyond the Veil coffee cups and T-shirts like this beauty right here at WTRMRadio.com, WTRMRadio.com, on their shopping link, plus merchandise for any of the great shows on the Trim Radio Network. And the network itself has some really awesome merchandise, too. I mean, how cool is that, right? Plus, we're also heard on United Public Radio Network, our old friends there, formerly UFO Paranormal Network, now at UPRNTalkRadio.com on the weekends, where they'll play archives of these episodes of Kindness Beyond Veil. So a special shout out to Bill Montaldo over at UPRN, and a loving shout out to our honored producer for this here show, the great Tim Rexbury. So big kisses to Timmy there. No tongues today. Timmy's one of the head honchos now here at Trim Radio, and his big hit radio show, Supernatural Realm, still running really strong. Tuesdays and Thursdays in this same time slot, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. And I get to co-host with Tim Roxbury on Supernatural Realm whenever I can. But it's a can't miss either way because Timmy finds the greatest guests, and it's a gift. So Tuesdays and Thursdays for that at 7 to 9. Monday, 7 to 9 for Kindness Beyond the Veil. Speaking of can't miss gifts, the fantastic Tom Conwell, our fantastic guest, will be honored today and joining us in a moment. But first, our Chipism segment. We call them Chipisms now, these introductory segments. I honor my good buddy John Tobin, who named my first intro segments when we did a show together called Keeping the Spirits Alive. And so to honor my buddy, we're calling it Chipisms. Our Chipism today deals with something that somehow blends jewelry, keys, feathers, King Louis XIV, eels, and old batteries made from glass. Today's Chipism is about electricity. Ooh. In this part of the world, it's all about Benjamin Franklin flying a kite in a thunderstorm back in 1752. But in 1200s BC, the Egyptians were familiar with electricity, apart from lightning, which has been here since time immemorial, But they knew that the electric eels in the waters were special. They called these eels the thunder of the night. They considered them the protector of all fishes. That's back in 1200 BC. Ancient Egyptians, a little bit more recent ancient Egyptian, but still way in the BCs, also found ways to store conductors of electricity in early batteries in parts of their pyramid structures, which shocked the modern world once we discovered that not too long ago. In the mid 600s BC, it was Theos of Miletus, a philosopher that thrived well before Socrates was born, that brought to Greek culture and made it publicly known that the jewel amber, when rubbed on a cat's fur or on some, other substances, created static electricity. So they kind of knew about static electricity in the Western civilization in 600 BCs and used that marvel as something between a great magic trick or a cruel prank. As a matter of fact, many years later, French King Louis XIV once lined up 100 of his soldiers, had them standing hand to hand, and used amber to pass that shock of static electricity through all of them. He thought it was hilarious. Soldiers, I'm not sure about. Funny how history repeats itself, though. But the actual term electricity was officially coined in the 1600s by a man named William Gilbert, who also related electricity and magnetism together for the first time, really, not quite knowing how big that would become eventually. But a huge fan of this William Gilbert, the guy who coined the term electricity, was Benjamin Franklin, a well-regarded printer in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. And yes, that Benjamin Franklin, he was a printer by trade, but a scientist at heart. And it was, in fact, Benjamin Franklin who first made positive and negative charge a well-known thing. Ben Franklin did that. He deduced that lightning was the result of activity in clouds where the positive charge would mull around on the bottom of the cloud, and negative charge would mull around the top, and they would eventually meet and create the king of all static electricity, lightning. It was with this knowledge that prompted Benjamin Franklin to make a kite out of silk rather than paper, with a piece of metal atop that silk kite, and hemp rope, because he actually liked hemp. There's some gossip about that. Yeah, only on this show you hear about that. But yeah, hemp rope as the kite string, with a key attached to the kite midway. Regardless of the common tale, he was actually indoors when he flew that kite. Kite was outdoors, but he was indoors while that thunderstorm was going on, because he knew if he got himself wet, he'd be more of a conductor than the key. And he couldn't tell the world how lightning could be used as active electricity if he was dead. But he did make electricity a household word. And that's in the 1750s, and invented the lightning rod a few years later. That to this day, we still put atop our homes and buildings, so lightning would be most attracted to those lightning rods in really bad thunderstorms rather than us people. And as it turns out, especially by the 1800s, it's all about atoms. The proton carries a positive charge. The electron carries a negative charge, and it's usually around the outer parts of the atom. The neutrons carry no charge, or neutral charge, if you will. And as you combine magnetism with electricity more and more from the late 1600s up to really the early 1900s, we'd still... without it, we'd still be using candlelight to see in the dark to light up this ugly face on this show. And you wouldn't be listening to this show with no conductors, especially made for computers, smartphones, and the like. But at least we'd still have indoor plumbing, most likely. Give me no light, but I want my indoor plumbing. But the role of electricity with UFOs or in paranormal investigations is where we go from here, because it's finally time to warmly welcome today's honored guest, Tom Conwell, to Kindness Beyond the Veil. Hi, Tom, and we welcome you back to Kindness Beyond the Veil. How you doing, my friend?
Great, Chip. Thank you for having me. And Tim, nice to meet you.
Yeah, the beautiful Tim Rockford. Isn't that great? We're not worthy. We're not worthy. I got most of that right. Right? Did I get some of that wrong?
No.
Look, I don't mind being wrong. I always love to learn. It was kind of a YouTube/Wikipedia thing I threw together there, but sometimes they give out BS information, so I'm just wanted to ask you if I got most of it.
That was pretty good.
Okay, cool. Well, I feel much better about myself. So, hey, I gotta ask you though, about your latest book, because I didn't see it coming. I think that the last time I saw you was maybe a little over a year ago. I think it was a little over a year ago.
Yeah, I think it was. It was before the lockdown.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was, like just on the cusp of it, because I
Yeah.
think it was sometime in like early 2020, and I didn't see it coming. So tell us again the title of the new book, because I can't scan it fast enough to look smart and do the thing. I'm going to blame the vaccine. I got vaccinated today, and I didn't hurt. I didn't have a stroke or anything. I got a little buzz on for some reason. So I'm probably the luckiest vaccinated person in the world. Pretty soon I'll be lining up for that Johnson & Johnson thing. But yeah, tell us the title of your new book and why, because I didn't see it coming, and I'd love to know all about it. But not too much to give the milk away for free, so to speak.
This is my book. I'm kind of trying to get the shadow out of there. But earthquakes and UFOs, their link is not what you think. And you probably see the Earth, and then melded in with that is a picture of an ET. There, somebody did that for me. I'm very, very impressed with it.
Yeah, I like that. I like that artwork. Oh, that wasn't your artwork, though.
No. I relegate myself to stick figures, and that's it.
We went to the same art school, you and me. Yeah. I don't know. I bet Timmy can draw. I learn something new about him every week. How about you, Tim? Are you a stick figure guy too, or are you ahead of us on? Can you do like?
I graduated stick figure.
Oh, see, he's got a little bit on you. That's a great cover, though. And I got to be, because Tom, you and I don't really live all that far from each other. We're both in upstate New York, and I can't remember the last earthquake we've had here. So I guess it begs the question: why would you think of earthquakes and UFOs? I know why you're thinking of UFOs.
Okay.
But why earthquakes?
All right. Well, if you listen to any of the TV shows, one of the things that they'll tell you is that the UFOs are attracted to earthquakes. And what I wanted to do was to try to prove that through the database. And the National UFO Reporting Center has a database of multiple sightings, probably in the area of 90,000 at this point.
Wow.
So I thought it would be pretty easy to track where all of the earthquakes occurred with the earthquake website. Put them on a map, and then grab the same map and put the sightings on top of it through the National UFO Reporting Center. I thought that would be like really simple.
Because you're a meteorologist yourself too, so I mean that makes perfect sense. So you'd have a better understanding of this than any non-meteorologist would.
Yeah.
I'm just
saying. Actually, everybody gets that wrong. I'm a metrologist.
Oh,
not a meteorologist. A metrology is the science of measurement.
Oh.
So I worked in a calibration lab calibrating electronics.
Oh, okay. I can't even blame spell check for that one.
No, everybody gets that one wrong. Everybody.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. But anyhow, what I wanted to do was try to prove that earthquakes were attractors for UFOs. So I did pretty much what I said. I put it on maps, and I created probably close to 80, maybe 85 within my book. And I tracked where the earthquakes occurred, the large and the small earthquakes, and then put right next to it the maps of the UFO sightings, all UFO sightings, and I stuck them on a U.S. map. And from there, I tried to say, well, okay, we have enough sightings in this area that I can prove that they're attracted to them.
Oh, okay. Because, that was, I was actually going to hit you with a hardball question. I never do hardball questions, but But a correlation is one thing, but when you say attract, it's got to be. I mean, a coincidence. I think the numbers would say nope, not a coincidence.
Okay.
But actually attracting them rather than just having them happen to be there in the area for whatever, for some reason other than being attracted to it.
Sure.
Is kind of a big line to fill in. So how did we do? Could you, at least in your as a professional opinion, correlate attraction?
No. No.
Wow.
I couldn't. And I mapped probably 20 major earthquakes from the time of 2001 through about 2016.
Wow. And the weather's been pretty generous to you in that. I mean, you look at the hurricanes and earthquakes and things. I mean, we seem to get so many now compared to maybe 20 or 40 years ago. And boy, this is the greatest time to be alive to do that kind of research, especially in the time span you're talking about.
Absolutely.
But okay, so why would you say you were looking to see if you could actually do enough correlation to prove they were attracted to earthquakes? Why do you say no? That's even more fascinating than if
I know.
you said yes.
It isn't what I expected. I expected to prove it, and I expected to have 100 maps that showed, you see, this is what happens when earthquakes occur, that UFOs get attracted around them. But I didn't see that. What I saw was something quite opposite. I saw with earthquakes that the UFO seemed to be attracted to the opposite end of the fault line where they occurred.
The opposite end.
In other words, the San Andreas Fault comes down through the Pacific Ocean and cuts into California, maybe 150 miles or so north of San Francisco, and then tracks alongside the coast, varying by 50 to 100 miles, all the way down through the San Diego area.
Right.
What I would see is a major quake that occurred in the top end of California and a whole lot of sightings in the bottom end.
Oh, wow.
And I saw that in almost every single instance.
Wow. So maybe they're attracted by a distance, or they know what the Goldilocks zone is.
Yeah.
We're going to use astrological talk. Wow. Well, that's pretty fascinating, though, in itself. And maybe that's part of that is the link you wouldn't think. And I'm not going to push you too hard on that because I don't want you to give all the good stuff away for free. I want people getting this book, man. Yeah. But that's fascinating, though. And you couldn't prove the actual attract. Because you were just talking earlier in the interview about when you watch the science shows or the history shows and some of the things that they're doing. To me, there's they've really upped the kind of the fear mongering approach. They're creating all sorts of situations that could kill us that we wouldn't even think about. Now that it's in our heads, it's real to us. And so they're going out of their way to scare you. I think that's a little bit unfair. That makes me angry because, they're really doing some amazing history, some amazing science. They're translating very complicated concepts into easy to understand stuff. And they can't stop there, though. They have to really push on that fear. But just imagine if that squid could, somebody said that they could see that squid jump 18,000 feet. That means that they could be in your neighborhood jumping right now and all over you. They don't have to do that. So, and I guarantee that if they were using the same thing, they wouldn't be like you. See, that's why I like you so much. You're not a fear-mongering guy. You want to get answers, and you're very dedicated to. You've been dedicated for years, and that's why I love you so much. You're a rare kind of gem. You're not using it to scare people or to sell insurance or cereal. You're looking at the science of everything, and that's why I hit you with that hardball question. It fascinated me. You said no, but that made it even more fascinating. That was the reason why, and you never went for that fear element. But
unless I can prove it, Chip, I'm not going to say it.
Yeah,
and that pretty much goes for the greatest majority of the strange theories that you hear out there today. I may say, I have a tendency to believe that, but since I don't have proof, I won't exactly say yes, and that's about as much as you'll get out of me.
Yeah, but you have to respect that. I don't think people see it commonly. They can't see it commonly. I mean, I don't see it commonly enough. I'm sure you don't see it commonly enough. But I still have to ask you, speaking of fear-mongering, there's this one thing that's kind of been lingering over me for a couple of weeks now. And it's kind of the question that I kind of ask over and over again now to people, because it's a new thing. It really started while I had the show on hiatus, but and you of all people are like the perfect person to ask. All of a sudden, it seems that the Pentagon and Department of Defense and professionals in the last, say, 2 or 3 administrations are suddenly willing. They're not just hiding this stuff, and they're not making mockeries of anyone who had any kind of information about contact or any legitimate UFO sighting type of thing. Now all of a sudden they're willing to come out. They got this big report in June they're talking about coming out with, and every day you see stories about. Today there was one about life on Mars with this new rover out there, and sometimes you'd see clickbait about stuff like that. This was not a clickbait article. This was different, and
this was a real thing.
Yeah, and it had NASA's name behind it. Now you're seeing all these stories that are backed up by Department of Defense people who would have gone out of their way to shut other people up for years and years and years, and all of a sudden they're out there with it now. They're out there. I don't know if it's to sidestep us from a pandemic or if they see something coming that we don't know about, but it feels suspicious to me. We've been for the last 12 years, I've been doing radio shows like this, waiting for this discovery to come along, or disclosure, the day of disclosure, and take me to your leader and all that stuff. But all of a sudden it's basically here, and it's just like they flipped a switch one day and all of a sudden, boom. But it feels suspicious to me. I would love your take on this, and if you think there's anything behind it, or it's just what it is and nothing more. What are your thoughts?
Okay. Well, I think they saw the writing on the wall. There were an increase in UFO sightings, that a lot of them were getting closer and closer. The personal opinions of people were tending towards, yes, I believe we're being visited. There was just a whole lot of different things coming together. There may even have been some decision years ago that they're going to turn the switch and start leading us toward a disclosure event. I think that they are. I think it's going to be a mini disclosure, such as they aren't going to tell us that we should all stop believing in God, that the aliens designed our bodies for us.
Right.
But what we're going to hear is that yes, they are a very spiritual people, that they're loving, that they are desirous of bringing us into the fold, even though we've done some really stupid things over the years.
Especially to each other. Yeah, that they just don't want us to nuke ourselves
Yeah.
because by proxy we send ribbons throughout the whole solar system and beyond, and the galaxy and the universe, and they don't want that. So,
Yep.
it's interesting that you say that because me and maybe. I mean, maybe I'm the kindness guy and everything, but I'm ever skeptical because I was off the air for a good 9 months or so, and I was really paying attention to how hard it is to find feel good stuff. If you're most people it wasn't their choice to be locked indoors, away from their loved ones, away from their jobs, away from their people, away from, and supply and demand, and away from toilet paper and away from bread and, all this. And they're amping up the fear. And I was, so expecting you to say, well, they'll kind of give us just enough information, like not enough to, so we can believe that they're safe. Because there is so much control in fear, and they're just using. I mean, even infotainment is using fear now. They're selling shoes with blood in them now, for God's sake. I mean, come on. and we were sold out in a minute. The Beatles used to do that. People don't even remember who the Beatles are. What's a Beatle? But still, it. I hope you're right. I hope you will say, because there are some Department of Defense people in every administration who were kind of saying, yeah, actually, they're friendly. Yeah, they're like centuries ahead of us in technology, and yet they're, if they haven't taken us over yet, then they're not going to. That's not part of the plan. But that would take a lot of that control element away. If they leak just enough to still scare the hell out of us and think we're still running into Armageddon's arms, I guess. But I'm more worried about that. I hope you're. What is there anything in particular that gives you the feeling? Because look, you're in the trenches with this stuff a lot more than I am. So is there any inclination or any real reason behind your inclination to think, okay, they may disclose that they're actually not ferocious and out to get us? They are very spiritual and they are very loving, and this could be a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, they first of all, I'm of the belief that they've been here for thousands, if not tens of thousands of years, because they've been shepherding the humans.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they were partly, if not mostly responsible for our race being what it is. They don't want us to go away. They were hoping that we would join them eventually. And that's all of them. The entirety of all of the races that are out there, and there's probably millions of them. There's nothing that I've ever seen that leads me to believe that we're on the verge of impending doom. Nothing.
Yeah. What do you think about sightings near nuclear armament, either bases or circumstances where they may have disarmed these nuclear armaments that would have gone off without their assistance, if you will?
Okay. Well, when we use nuclear weapons against ourselves, meaning Japan, it's really ourselves. It isn't a different race there. They're right. Humans. Right. When we did that, we created a whole different idea of them monitoring us. They really were very careful after that we weren't going to that we weren't going to do that again. Now, as far as the nuclear weapons that were shut down in either North Dakota or Montana, I think they did that just to send us a general message. Guys, we don't want you to do that anymore. In addition to that message, I think they were also testing their own systems as to what they can do if we did launch something.
Interesting. Yeah.
And, wouldn't it be great if they could shut down the ability for that rocket to blast off a nuclear weapon? So, they had to experiment. And what they did worked, certainly. They were able to do what they wanted to do, and they haven't really had a need to do that again since the late 50s.
Yeah. That's right. Part of me suspiciously thinking, I'm not normally suspicious, but there's just something about the timing of this, middle of a pandemic and political and governmental structures are breaking down, or people are wanting to see them broken down. Entertainment is fear and anger based more than anything. The anti-hero is here, the day of the internet. And boy, I forgot what my point was going to be. I'm going to blame the vaccine for that. I had this great point, Timmy. I was going right there.
AIDS does that.
Yeah, but we had some people we brought in last year. We were talking about it on Supernatural Realm. Tim Roxbury, our producer, Tim Roxbury. It's his show right here on Trim Radio, WTRMradio.com, Tuesdays and Thursdays in this very time slot, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Because we were speculating, if there is some sort of God to extraterrestrial civilizations who have been here for, billions of years longer, perhaps, what would that sort of thing look like? And the speculation was, and most recently was brought up as, and something that I came across too in my own research and my own dealings, if you will, was this, that book of Ra, the sun god Ra, the Ra collective. It's called the Law of One. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. And basically, it's everything, every living thing, every material thing, period, is made of the same stuff. The same atoms, the same subatomic particles, and so everything is basically in terms of equal. And sometimes there has to be chaos in order for beauty to happen. Something chaotic normally has to happen first, and eventually when all the dust settles, it becomes something beautiful. So all these dichotomies, the masculine and feminine, the good and evil, the life and death, and all these things are just all part of this very balanced equation. It doesn't give them any character or personal. It's just like a doctor will say, if you have some long-term disease, you don't personalize the disease. You don't make it a demon. You don't give it characteristics of a person, because you will worsen this long-term illness. So you don't do that, so much like in the same thing, any kind of dichotomy, any kind of yin yang, if you will, is just all part of this same unified picture. So, we're all from the same stuff. So why should there be lesser and greater, or better and not as good types of things? Have you ever come across anything like that? Because it's a weird thing to ponder, but, we're talking about weird things to begin with. Most people don't have to put their heads into these spaces. So, but we always pondered, would there be a religion, and in the planets of some different galaxy or a different star system or something?
I've attempted writing in the lines of religions, but I always hit stumbling points because I was unable to come up with the actual religious reference that caused me to believe that. So I just didn't have the background. But I always wanted to write in this regard, that I believe that a God exists, and this God is the same God for everybody. That what we actually pray to on the earth is not this God. What we pray to on the earth is angels, our spirit protectors, things like this. And these are the people that intervene and, if we're lucky, give us some effect.
Yeah.
But the same God exists for everybody in every universe. And I think that God had his hands in this somewhere.
Yeah, a couple of physicists brought it up. I think it was again on one of Timmy's shows, where it's not about the Big Bang, which is the physicists' version of creation, if you will. It was whatever was there before the Big Bang. Because whatever it was there before the Big Bang was big enough to have all this space that is now occupied by energy and matter, in the way it came around. I mean, how many things, when you have equal amounts of matter and antimatter, how is it not just continue to be this huge blank nothingness? How did it allow this energy? Because things had to go wrong in order for that to happen. There would have to be some defective gamma burst to bring out one extra matter over the matter-antimatter equivalent in order to, bring us light and energy and matter and everything that we see now and stuff. So actually, I usually say that to the disabled. If it weren't for disabled energy, we wouldn't have energy and mass and matter at all. Something had to go wrong in order for that to go right. You know what I mean?
Well, sure. There's probably trillions of failed universes.
Yeah, that's
that tried to spontaneously create, and like you said, something was wrong. Just couldn't do it.
Yeah,
couldn't do it.
There's even last week there was some article. I think it was Russia or somewhere in Eastern Europe. These theoretical physicists, how they're thinking that the universe itself is a living, thinking thing, because it continues to correct its mistakes. On a grand scale, when we're talking stars and planets and solar systems and galaxies and interstellar space, you can still see certain things that are now correcting themselves that might not have happened 80 billion years ago, if that makes sense at all to you. I thought that was just kind of cool for some I love these theoretical guys. They come up with some great stuff, but because of the CERN experiments and all the new things they're learning about these really subatomic quarks and things like that, it's allowing them to come up with all these different things. I mean, they proved the God particle, if you will, the boson. So in all these new and different things that they're trying, they're seeing stuff work in ways that even the really weird ways the very small world works, it's even, beyond anything that we could conceive. I don't think that we're at the point yet where we can catch up to, what some atomic particles and quarks are doing. But it's the very small, ultimately, that controls what the very grand does, but the worlds are so completely different. It's fascinating.
We're still millions of years behind.
Yeah. Oh, at least. And I think that partly that's why, and it's interesting to, we had another discussion. Which do you think will be proven first, ghosts or extraterrestrials? And I think the answer is pretty clearly extraterrestrials, because we're pretty close. I mean, we can see our own microbiology exist when we put them into the vacuum of space, and they just hibernate. And when the atmosphere and the temperatures go back to being correct again for them, they just reanimate.
I actually think that one is not responsible for, but actually encouraging the presence of the other.
Yeah. You'd have to think. You'd have to think it would be something microbial. When we're learning that most of the moons in our solar system are more water than mass, than land, if you will. Mm-hmm. Especially some of the moons, Saturn and Jupiter. I think, and it's pretty easy to imagine that's probably where the octopus actually came from, because those things are not like anything else on this planet. But to think there must be, microbials, because they're existing here in places that we assessed according to our standard model of how everything works. It's impossible for them to survive in atmospheres, like the deepest depths of the ocean or the highest depths of the atmosphere, where they're still thriving, if not surviving, regardless of temperature or anything. And maybe, because we've made everything about us, we always thought we were so much smarter than animals, and now we're learning that's wrong. So why does everything have to be like us? Why does it have to be humanoid if it's going to be, thinking, intellectual species? Maybe it's all made out of carbon dioxide or ammonia or something, and we just don't think of it, or whatever that dark matter stuff is.
Oh, yeah. There's something to that stuff.
There has to be.
Sure there is.
Yeah. It's just weird how everything eventually becomes from chaos into, that everything has this now rotation. In our solar system, everything has these even rotations, even odd rotations, or even, they're patterned. They're all circular and spherical. And how does that happen? And everything is basically in a constant state of free fall. And yet it still manages all these same patterns and, structure. And that's that dark energy, that dark matter, not the dark energy. Yeah. I even assess it to parts of our paranormal world. There's a segue. I think that in some of these extreme haunting cases, where the consciousness as an energy, or as some sort of force, if not energy. It could be a subtle force that has impact over energy, or it could be energy. But if consciousness itself is an energy and survives these physical bodies, then if some learn how to work with and manipulate this dark matter, which isn't dark, it's just a word for we don't know what to call it. Yeah. They can call it dumb matter, but it's us that's dumb. We can't figure out what the matter is. But it's all around us, and it keeps everything structured. It keeps the most it has more power really over anything else. Even if you think in terms of millions of universes, there would still be this dark matter that keeps them the way that they are, or has an eventual structure to them. So if someone in spirit could learn how to use their consciousness energy and manipulate it with this dark matter, then they could sit on people and take their breath away, or pull their hair and push them down a flight of stairs, or move objects around that are heavier than a pound, so to speak. When the kinds of things that you see in like severe malevolent paranormal types of things. Any thoughts about that one? I know
Sure.
I'm kind of throwing that out there.
Okay. I would not be surprised if the ghost thing has been around since the beginning of time, certainly. But I wouldn't be surprised if the act of the population awakening is thinning that veil, so to speak. I mean, a reference to your program here, but is thinning that veil between us in this life and those that have been passed on. And they, especially the people who have awakened, can now reach in to the universe that is the those that are passed on, and make contact that way. I would not be surprised if that was a part of the situation also.
Yeah, I actually really love the way you put that, because as I think about it, coming from the space of somebody who for 7 years or so was very tuned into mediumship, was in that zone. It's more like a radio frequency. I was dialed into that radio frequency because the messages were very accurate.
Okay, that brings up another thought. Just since the 1940s, there's been a huge jump in UFO sightings. Now, 40s, 50s, 60s, up through 2010, perhaps. It was pretty consistent for how many sightings per year were happening. Right around that point, there was a huge jump in the amount of UFO sightings. I believe that the act of these crafts jumping through dimensions is, let me explain it this way. If you were to put a rowboat in a lake where there's no ripples, and you push the rowboat and then reached out and stopped it, what would happen? You'd see these ripples go out from both sides that were created as the rowboat went through the water. These ripples, if I'm not mistaken, were actually creating ripples in the universe that was housing the paranormal. That was
interesting.
Yeah, and I believe that what they're doing is they're actually shaking things up and causing paranormal events.
Wow, boy, that makes a lot of sense to me, and it's brilliant if you think about it. And plus, really, since the 30s and 40s, we've been using light to communicate across great distances. Radio waves, microwaves now for internet and television broadcasting, but radio wave for Morse code at first, and then radio programming. So you could be in Russia and hear something out of Ohio, USA, if you're just in the right place at the right time at the right moment.
Sure.
But it is a form of light, so it's traveling at the at least what we still believe is the fastest speed of all things, the speed of light. There's got to be something faster than light. I mean, in the microcosmic world, there's got to be something. But still, we're using a medium of light that we can't see. Talk about not believing all this stuff because we can't see it. We're talking about electricity today. You can't see it, but you can, when it's there, right? Radio and these broadcasts, we're using a medium of light waves to broadcast from long, all across at least this planet, and beyond. So they could, on this rowboat through these ripples and through these dimensions, they could be picking up our broadcasts. They could be asking us pretty soon, where Ricky Ricardo really lives.
It's possible. a radio is a wave, and this wave, when it transmits, especially at the radio frequencies, it bounces off of the ionosphere and back to Earth, and it may do that multiple times. So as it does that, that allows someone in, let's say, Russia, to hear something from Ohio. Who's to say that the light, which is also a wave, that the light isn't bouncing off of who knows what out there, and refracting to multiple different places. And it's not just going out in a straight line like an antenna's aiming there. It may indeed be going out 360 degrees.
Yeah. And we don't normally think about that, because by the time we see stuff at large distances away, it's straight, because they've had their antennas or their telescopes to refract the light so we can see straight ahead, even though it's supposed to be bent. And then you've got the space-time, the whole thing about space-time. If something is heavy enough to warp space, then it also warps time. And now that we're actually seeing two neutron stars collide some 17 billion light years away, or two black holes merge, 5.4 billion light years away. At some point in time, it's going to pass by this planet, so it's not going to have the same kind of weight behind it, but it'll be anomalous in a lot of minuscule areas,
Sure. Well, they already picked those things up. The LIGO craft has picked up gravity waves.
Yeah,
when the two black holes collide. Yeah,
but eventually it's like, well, let's say on the stars and planets, how the universe works and shows like that. They usually point out the biggest kind of like the gamma ray burst, that eventually, even though it happens, it's going to pass by this planet at some point, but by the time it gets there, it'll be so weak it's not going to really have any effect. And already our magnetic shields will be strong enough to deflect any of it, even if it comes in the form of gamma, the highest frequency of light. But if you think about the gravitational waves, by the time this major warp in space and time reaches Earth, it maybe something that happened 5.5 billion years ago is just reaching us now, but it will have some impact. It will warp time and warp space, but on a much lower level because it's traveled so far. So it could explain, for example, why some people could speak to the spirit of somebody from 1820 and have a real-time conversation, even though that spirit from 1820 is in a completely different space-time, a non-local space-time, and is in real-time communication with our current three-dimensional space-time. How can something non-local have such impact on a local thing? I mean, that's the physics question, really.
Sure.
And that's why some of the theoretical stuff is so fascinating. But you wonder, now that we know about gravitational waves, perhaps that explains a lot of the paranormal activity. But it's also, I think, a point you made a while ago, our awareness of it, our awareness of the thinning veil. Somebody the other day was talking about how our solar system, our sun itself, our sun rotates around the galaxy just like our Earth rotates around the sun, and so on and so forth. So maybe our sun is in a higher energy part of the galaxy in this particular rotation, and we're aware of it because of the technology and we're being bombarded by light all the time, this light pollution with our smartphones and our TVs and our microwave ovens and our radios and all this, you can't even see the stars at night anymore because of this light pollution. But people feel more than they used to. So when the veil thins, we're so sensitive now that we may be more sensitive to that. And our technology has allowed us all to be a little bit smarter, even on average, to accept really strange anomalies like ghosts or extraterrestrials that travel interdimensionally and things like that. And that's why I really like how you said that. And we love our friends here. We certainly do. You're listening to Kindness Beyond the Veil. Your host, Chip Reichenthal. Our honored guest today is Tom Conwell. What a phenomenal friend he is. Boy, I love Tom. Speaking of friends, just to let you know, next week at this very time, Monday, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern, our guests, I'll have two next week. Glenda Dawson and Larry Davidson will be joining us. Just on a side note, I did have this thing that I got the vaccine for today. I got a little buzz off of this vaccine, I will say. Kind of enjoying it a little bit. I got a lot of built-in excuses, if I go way too off the map today. But it was Glenda Dawson's Reiki. I do believe in my heart of hearts that kept me alive. Because there were a couple of days when we actually saw death. And death, by the way, listens to Kindness Beyond the Veil. So big shout out to Death, I guess, for not getting to me that day. But Glenda Dawson is like a black belt, literally, in Reiki. And I really credit her for keeping us alive, So her and Larry Davidson will be here next week to talk about that. In 2 weeks, our friend Krista Cesare will talk about a malevolent haunting that he endured called the C2D1. It became an internationally known malevolent haunting case. And he's the sweetest guy on the planet. So, how even malevolent hauntings can happen to really nice, sweet people, because we're going to keep it sweet here on Kindness Beyond the Veil. But we are with Tom Conwell today, and boy, what an honor that is. We've been talking about earthquakes and UFOs, the link that you wouldn't expect. That is, he's got a book out about that right now. Thomas W. Conwell. Check it out, or Tom Conwell on Facebook, and you can find his books through there. And he'll tell you some more places to. Where can people find your books, Tom? Why don't we get it straight from the horse's mouth instead of some vaccinated, spaced out dude?
Okay. The books can be purchased through me directly. Of course, then I'll sign them personally for you. I'm best. Located at Facebook. It's facebook.com/tom.conwell.3. That's my Facebook address. And if you were to send me a message, even though we're not friends, I'll probably see it. And I can give you prices and whatever else. The other way, of course, is directly through Amazon. And you can search my books there via name or via my name.
Is it Thomas W. Conwell or Tom Conwell?
No. I write as Thomas W.
Thomas W. Okay.
Yeah. And then the other option is you could send me an email, and my email address is TCONWEL2@nycap.rr.com. That's T Conwell with one L, 2@nycap.rr.com. And of course, I'm looking at email all the time, and I'll respond to you there too. So.
Yeah, see, now I can't personally speak on behalf of the latest book, but I've read the series 1, series 2, of They Are Here, and the one about stellar travel, which I thought was phenomenal. Going Interstellar.
Yeah.
Whatever, one of my favorite books, actually, that one, because it really made me think a lot. And I do like thinking this is the best way to learn, even if you've accumulated a lot of wisdom throughout your life. Yeah. It's still great to have questions entertaining our minds. And that was a really good one. Boy,
what I tried to do with that book is to write about the things that you always wondered about UFOs. How do they do that stuff? How do they get here? How can they possibly travel that fast? And answer the questions in terms of what would we have to do in order to do that? And all the problems we would have to solve in order to do that. And I tried to get people to really think in ways that they haven't thought of before.
Yeah.
And it's a real mental exercise.
It really is. And you did it very, very, very effectively. I say the same thing about trying to talk about mediumship, talking to the dead, to people who normally wouldn't even have a thought process about that whatsoever, or a belief, anywhere near a belief system to lead to a thought process about that. You have to put your mind in very strange places in order to answer strange puzzles about strange questions. And you really, really did that. And I think that, the ultimate conclusion is, boy, we've still got a long way to go.
Do we ever?
It also opens the interdimensional travel. And, we've got some people that are very deep into the field, that the ones that are headliners at these UFO conferences or, extraterrestrial conferences, ancient alien conferences, who are asking the same kind of questions. And because of that are coming up to similar conclusions. You have to think they have to figure out some interdimensional way. I think I told me once that they're 1 second ahead of us. That's it. They've just skewed if we're thinking in terms of time as a straight arrow, they've skewed theirs 1 second faster than us. So we'll never see them, or maybe we'll see glimpses of them out of the corner of our eye or something.
Yeah.
And I think, that's kind of a brilliant thought. And again, with space-time.
The other thing that we see them do up in the sky is disappear and pop up almost instantly in a totally different place in the sky.
Yeah,
now,
right.
How is that possible? The only way that it would be possible is to slip into a different time frame, and do their traveling, and then pop up somewhere else.
Yeah. And maybe they've answered the dark matter question, and they're utilizing that for because earlier on in our interview, when I asked you, why this sudden disclosure thing, all of a sudden you've got 3 administrations worth of Pentagon officials ready to come out and out all these things that they knew about for all along and all that stuff. And part of what you said was about interdimensional travel, because we don't think beyond the fourth dimension, which even Einstein was going to make a fifth dimension before he died, and that was he was very frustrated. He couldn't finish it, and it was going to have some sort of combination of gravity and quantum mechanics, spooky action at a distance, combined in that fifth dimension, which I think would have helped answer some of these dark matter questions. Or if a black hole is just a big conglomerate of dark matter, and that's it. It's just kind of taken over, especially when you get into the core of that black hole. It's just, but you would think that if they do the laws of physics that we're working with now at that standard model, they would have had to have started to travel here, 40 billion years ago. So they'd be a lot older than we would be.
Boy, yeah,
Yeah.
that wouldn't have worked.
No, it doesn't make sense. And then Timmy's favorite thing, the wormholes. I mean, but it's just there has to be some sort of antimatter that is kind of required to keep a wormhole open. There would have to be some sort of antimatter, so it wouldn't collapse onto itself. Well, there certainly was a lot of it in the early seconds of the Big Bang, so it's not that it disappeared, it's got to be somewhere in that dark matter equation too.
Yeah. Well, they probably utilized energy from the quantum world, which is so small that our mind can't even wrap around how tiny that is. Yet within this quantum world, there is more energy than has been used or created in all the universe, just available for use.
Sure. I mean,
it's just craziness.
Yeah, it is. Even thinking that the Big Bang Theory in itself, not the comedy show, but the real world. One of my dad's best friends was like the second guy in that theory. He was the underling, Dr. Ralph Alford, his name was. I actually said to him once when I was a kid, so nothing turned into everything, and that's the best you got. I remember saying that to him. I'm going to be guilty about that for the rest of my life. But they're talking about it being a billionth of 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 the size of an atom.
Yep.
Think of how infinitely small we are in accordance with the rest of the universe. The way you look at pictures of the universe now, it looks like veins, arteries, and organs. It looks like the entire universe is a body part from some huge, huge being.
Sure it does.
We could really be nothing more than little RNAs floating around. And,
indeed, that might be God.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It could be. I got to honor a promise. As fascinating as this is, because somebody's been waiting a long time for me to ask you some questions about the role of electricity in paranormal investigation, and I do want to differentiate before even starting. Because if you watch the paranormal, especially on TV, or if you're in paranormal groups, especially if you're green and just really getting into this stuff and don't really have sources for expert information other than what you see on television, which is regular people doing this stuff. They don't have experts doing it. I mean, they are now, but they had regular people trying this stuff, and that's what made it so fascinating and allowed it to continue running. I mean, the ghost hunters, for example, were, some plumbers from Rhode Island, that
was unlikely, wasn't it?
Yeah, but that's the whole thing. It's hard to find, because there's really no such thing as experts in the paranormal. Otherwise, we'd have all the answers.
Sure.
We would have proven it by now. But with that said, EMFs are big things. Everybody got their little EMF counters and EMF meters, even though most people don't even know what that represents. And that's just electromagnetic frequency. And that's electricity and magnetism and the frequencies involved in that. But I wanted to ask you about electricity, the role of electricity itself, because I get a lot of questions about that I can't answer. And if we can differentiate electricity from electromagnetic frequencies, or if we shouldn't, I don't know. I guess I want to start basic and go, I've been on a lot of investigations where, because we have our little EMF meters and everything, the first thing we do is we go to the fuse box of whatever property we're on, and we turn all the electricity off. We shut that box down. It's a good start.
Yep.
Is it necessary? Is it necessarily necessary? I mean, we do that for EMFs, but do you think it should be done 100% of the time, or or by doing it, we might be missing out on something.
Okay. Wow. That's, first of all, if you're shutting down the power in a small house, probably doesn't make a difference. Unless you have, poor wiring in the house.
Mm.
And that poor wiring could include anything from, leaky magnetic frequencies that are generating from ungrounded outlets to computers being plugged in to a ground connection within your power box that should go to an actual ground, but instead goes to a crap ground, one that isn't really ground. Okay.
Yeah, most people don't think about that.
That would be each of those items would create a problem for you. And the problems that would be created is that when you use your piece of junk K2 meter, okay, and that you put it down on the table and ask a spirit a question and tell them to light the lights, and they light the light. So, okay, is that Aunt Tilly? I don't know. Okay. If you are to ask a question and start changing the time frame at which you're asking the question. In other words, you ask a question every 45 seconds and then wait. If you were to vary that from 20 seconds to 3.5 minutes to 40 seconds, and the lights still go off at around the time that you've asked the question, then maybe you have something, but you still can't say that's a ghost.
Right.
All that you can say is that's interesting. You need multiple.
Brought that up.
You need multiple pieces of equipment to give you positive responses, such as an audio recorder.
Some analog stuff.
Yeah, especially that. I like utilizing a compass, because if you have magnetic fields around you that are changing basically because of a ghost, and it's in the general area of this compass, the compass will deflect on you or bounce or something. Wow. That's more feedback. Okay. If you have all that kind of information coming into you, then maybe you can say, I may have something here. But when you utilize the lights of this, and you have not shut down the power, multiple things can happen. First of all, you may have current going through a electrical plug out to a computer. The 110 volts from the power gets changed into a 5-volt square wave, and this 5-volt square wave generates magnitudes of EMF that you can't even believe. And if you're in the general area of a K2 meter and a computer power supply, it will go nuts on you.
But probably knock your meter out.
It may. But that is an issue, okay? The other issues are if you happen to have a poor ground in your house, especially in the older houses, and these are the houses that have or are purported to have ghost infestations. When you go in, the first thing you should do is go downstairs to where the power box is and look at the box itself. And this box should have a wire from the box to an actual ground thing outside, a ground rod, 8-foot copper ground rod that goes outside into the ground right next to the house, within hopefully about 5 feet of where the your actual power box is. What if you didn't have that? What if somebody took a shortcut and thought, well, why do I have to do that? Why can't I just run a wire over to a copper line? Because the copper from the water line is going into ground. Well, that's perfect, right? It's ground one way or the other. Technically, it is. However, what happens after about 50 years is small currents start flowing within the copper from ground to ground, believe it or not, and they deposit something on the a copper pipe in the area where your ground wire is, and pretty soon you have a bad connection to ground, and you have AC or EMF generated absolutely everywhere. If you go near a water pipe in the kitchen, AC. If you go near the refrigerator that's probably hooked up to water, AC. If you went upstairs into the bathroom, AC. If you looked in the area of where your laptop is connected, AC. It's going to be everywhere, and you're going to have some big problems if you do that. So I would recommend multiple things. Number one, inspect your ground. Make sure that it goes to a ground rod outside. If it doesn't, then shut off all the power and hope for the best. That's all you have. That's all you can do is hope for the best. If you have a good ground, then if by shutting off the power, you know the ground is going to be actually ground, and you're not going to get junk in there. Yeah. Also, if you were to walk around the house with the K2 meter, about 2 or 3 feet off the ground, just hold it out and walk around. If you have areas where you have a lot of EMF pickup, then you're probably going to have that in the house too, because you have something wrong with your ground. Or there's something wrong in the ground of the house next to it.
Of the house next to it.
I mean, there's all kinds of stuff here, okay? You really got to be aware of your power. Most people aren't because they haven't ever worked in that regard.
Well, no, they haven't spent 40 years as an electrical engineer. But really, a place next door could actually have that much effect on the place that you're
It's possible.
investing.
Yep. It's possible. And I've seen houses that have buried electric that goes into the house. And then it pops out and gets wired, and they run their ground and they do what they need to do there. But if there's a buried a buried power line that goes to the house next door to you, well, what are you picking up there? I just don't know. There's all kinds of variables, but the best you can do is try to use the better instruments like a millimeter, plus an analog device. I forget what they call the analog device.
For what, for sound or for the EMF thing? Or?
EMF and RF. Anyhow, if you have an analog plus a digital device, you're way better off than just the straight K2 meter. If you want to use a K2 meter for just monitoring, and you put it up in a corner and look at it every so often to see if it's flashing, that's all the information you'll get out of that. Use the better devices. analog plus digital at the same time in the same general area, plus multiple ways to verify that you have something going on.
Wow. Yeah, boy, that's that. There was a kind of a poltergeist scenario, but in terms of electricity, it turns out in that movie. Oh, spoiler alert! These greedy people, they knocked down a bunch of old cemeteries and built houses over them because that was great land. It was.
Yeah.
It was near, where the action was for that town or whatever. And so it's a bunch of greedy people doing some rather soulless things, and the souls fought back. I'm thinking of that scenario, but in terms of electricity, let's say that there had been a house there with a ground, whether that's that copper wire in the back that, you hook up your household stuff to that you were referring to earlier. But let's say it's 20 feet over where this new property has been built. They tore an old property foundation down, didn't basically do anything about the ground, the electric ground there, and built a new property over it with a new electric ground for that property. So it could be an old ground from an old house you don't even know about. Maybe the town hall doesn't have any information saying that some greedy construction worker, knocked down some property from somebody who had been disgraced, or some place that was just run down, and didn't say anything about it and just built something over it anyway, or had connections in politics, so it didn't make the town hall books, and even the county historians couldn't know about it. That would create some issues too, wouldn't it? Even
only if the AC were still hooked up to that building.
Oh, okay.
Only if the AC wasn't hooked up to the building and there's just wires from ground, it wouldn't matter a bit.
Wow, interesting. I got to ask you about. And it should have something to do with electricity, I guess, but maybe it doesn't. So it could be my ignorance about this.
Well, go ahead.
But it always seemed from all the places that I went to for investigations, and there was a lot of different places, and my wife and I would pick some unusual spots, and we didn't do it with teams or anything. We just, do it on our own. But it always seemed there was always this correlation, at least to me, that especially a property that was near water, near a bed of water, especially beds of water you could see, or was in a place that was kind of like England. It rained more often during any given year than it didn't rain. Seemed to have an increased activity. Would that have anything to do with electricity? See how ignorant a question it is potentially?
Water. Okay. I have done some investigations of buildings next to water, and I haven't seen any correlation between increased activity and the presence of water. However, I did a investigation of an area where water flowed freely in under the building, and that building was off the hook. That was nutso. Now, is one exactly related to the other? I don't know, but I would suspect that if this building were old, it probably had a poor ground that created your problem. If you made sure that building had a really good grounding system and it was done well, then all of your problems would probably go away.
That's it. I like the way you answered it, especially because in our conversations this evening alone, you've written a book about earthquakes and UFOs, and you were looking for a correlation that would infer, I guess, as a reader, that there is a correlation between earthquakes and UFO activity. And I hit you with the hardball question. Well, is there? And you said you couldn't actually find a specific correlation saying that they attract UFO activity.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that there is a correlation, but it doesn't mean that just because there's an earthquake, all the UFOs are going, hey, we got to check this out. So that's very similar to my question. Because it maybe not for the water. But my question is, the correlation between water and activity and paranormal activity in places may not have to any correlation matter, because I'm not thinking about the electricity itself and or if the property is grounded or improperly grounded or inaccurately grounded,
Mm-hmm.
historically. So ground is a big thing. I got another weird one for you.
As a matter of fact, it's so big that if you had a poor ground and you had a good meter, you could actually measure an electric flow, a current flow, a potential difference from ground to ground.
Huh.
That would be a bad scenario.
Wow, I never thought. Yeah. All right, I want to ask you. I do have a weird question, so remind me. I got a weird question for you. But I wanted to go back to one thing you said about a computer hookup with 125 volt, and you said that it would create this pocket of 5 mega volts or something.
Okay. Let me re-explain that one. When you plug a computer, not necessarily a laptop, but a desktop, you plug a desktop computer into power. Mm-hmm. The 110 volts comes into the desktop, and that voltage is stepped way down to about 10 volts AC. Okay? Through a transformer. Mm-hmm. And it takes this voltage and puts it through an oscillator and creates a square wave.
Okay.
Yep. Just like I pictured here. Creates a square wave, and this square wave is used to power the computer itself. Okay, you're powered by a square wave instead of a sine wave out of the plug. And what happens when you generate a square wave with power is that with a sine wave that's 110 volts out of the wall, with a sine wave, it can be one pure frequency, 60 cycle. Okay, up and down, 60 cycle. When you create a square wave out of this sine wave, what a square wave creates is an infinite amount of odd order harmonics.
Huh.
In other words, if you made a sine wave at 1,000 hertz, you're going to have generations of frequencies of 3,000, 5,000, 7,000, 9,000, 11,000, 13,000, 15,000 hertz. And all these frequencies will be there, even though in decreasing amounts, but they'll all be there, and they're all measurable. And this is also can be seen if you were to hook an EMF gauge and put it right next to it.
Interesting.
It goes berserk.
Huh. These harmonic frequencies, because when I hear voltage, the first thing I thought of is heat and overheating or shorting out and overheating. That's why the computers have all the fans and everything, even on my desktop. But to these harmonic frequencies that are in the atmosphere, so your EMF meter would pick them up. Is it creating any harm to my body or the circuitry of the computer? Or is it just a reaction of this transfer of energy? Does that even make sense, my question?
Yeah. First of all, they're very low level.
Okay.
And if you put your EMF gauge near it, it'll detect them. You won't ever feel it.
Okay.
It'll never be harmful to you, but your gauge will know.
Right.
And if it's somewhere near it, then your gauge will be going crazy, lighting up all of your dots across the top and blinking bright red. And you'll say, "Oh man, I don't know what's here." Well,
close. No, that makes a lot of sense because I the reason that I have a desktop and not a laptop or a smartphone. Actually, I ended up getting a smartphone finally, but it's this 5G thing that everybody's been talking about. I mean, it was designed as a war weapon in the 1940s. And now people are holding it up to their heads every day willingly, so it just sounds like something dangerous. It doesn't. And when I finally broke down and I got a senior citizen smartphone, so it wouldn't cost me a fortune. But with this smartphone, because it gets up to 5G, came all these warnings. I mean, there were 3 pages of disclaimers on this phone. It was even not one of the more expensive, but it was a cheap smartphone, and all these warnings: don't hold it too close to yourself, don't touch it too much, don't hold near your butt. I mean, all these, it made me scared to even go near the damn thing. And this is something I'm supposed to make phone calls with and hold up to my head. Do you have any, this 5G, is it really as scary as it sounds? And that's not even a paranormal question, but it is radiation. It's radioactivity,
it's just a high frequency is what it is. And do I think it's harmful? Well, no, I don't think it's that harmful. However, because it has created a problem with maybe 1 or 2 people in the world, you're going to get 8 billion exclusion messages. Be careful. This could cause brain cancer. Don't do this. Don't do that. I don't believe that there's an issue with the general population. It's the same thing with the and you were talking about just receiving the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. They stopped that for a very short time because 6 people out of 8 million who got it had some sort of negative reaction. 6. All right. Now, does that mean that it's bad? Well, the numbers are so low there. I don't think it's bad. As a matter of fact, with any vaccine, you're going to get some number like that. So just out of safety, they backed off on putting that in arms for 2 weeks before they could look at it more carefully. But it's the same kind of thing. It does not do that kind of harm.
All right, I got one more weird question for you, but this is paranormally inclined. I got a buddy of mine who's out in California. He lives on a property that at one time there was a house that belonged to actress Sharon Tate, who was, of course, infamous for being a victim of in the Manson killings. Mm-hmm. Now, in real life, they tore that property down, and my buddy and his dad built a property, not knowing the significance of being on Cielo Drive. But it turns out to be what parapsychologists I mean, I'm not going to name them specifically, but they're two guys who are the most well-known parapsychologists worldwide. Said had the highest electromagnetic frequency activity of any property that they've seen. And that in itself is kind of an unusual thing. But I mean, this guy, he's got kind of a constant taping of, I mean, stuff happens all the time. Things move around on their own. I mean, you just see all sorts of anomalies, paranormal inclined anomalies happening every day, like just about any significant, pick a significant time, every 2 minutes of every day. I mean, it's just, and he's just so used to it. And he's come up with, he's the guy who said, no matter where you go, it's haunted. Everywhere's haunted because everywhere you are meant something to somebody at some point in time, even if it's in the future, because the time is not this straight arrow we all think it is. And I thought that was kind of brilliant. But to have his house classified as the most active in the country is a pretty unique thing coming from two parapsychologists. I mean, these guys are tough to, you really have to prove something to these guys in order for it to carry any muster with them. And for him, two of them, to say this is the most active property in the entire country says a lot. And I don't know how many computers he has. And I don't know if that harmonic frequency thing with the computer voltage would add to that, or but to have two parapsychologists, I mean, these are basically the well-paid skeptics, if you will, say, "Wow, that I've never seen anything like that." Is something. Do you think that would necessarily correlate to electricity? Or not?
Maybe. Hold on a second. I think I'm going to sneeze.
Okay. Bless you.
Oh, maybe not. Okay.
Well, bless you anyway.
Yeah, thank you. Is it possible that there's bad electricity? Well, yeah, it is possible. I'm not going to say that's the reason because I haven't looked at the house, obviously. But if this house is active because it's in the proximity of a magnetic field, is there water running beneath the house? Is there? I mean, there's a lot of different reasons, and I can't really come up with anything there that would indicate that. If it happened to be Sharon Tate's house, you'd say, well, okay, maybe she's visiting, but
there are pretty clear indications that she's there. If you see some of these recordings that he makes, he just runs a recorder all day long, puts it on YouTube or his website or whatever. The actual property that Sharon Tate lived at and died at, the Roman Polanski Sharon Tate, how they destroyed that. That property was destroyed. And, these guys come into Cielo Drive, they find some land that's affordable, and they go, hey, dream come true, right? They didn't really realize the significance of what they were building a new property on.
Sure.
So it could even be the old grounding from the original home that was there that was destroyed that has some sort of impact on it. But it's just for two parapsychologists, Yeah. I mean, it's like that one guy, the amazing Randy or whatever, who dared people $1 million to prove afterlife or something. I mean, that's basically what parapsychologists do. They have to have specific evidence. I mean, even something that you can repeat on will, in a laboratory setting type of thing is what these guys are looking for. Otherwise, it's hard to make believers out of them. But for two of these guys to say, I've never seen anything like this before, and the EMF spikes are literally above and beyond anything we've ever seen ever in our entire tenure. Some's got to be going on.
Yeah. If he has that much EMF, then he's going to have tremendous amounts of energy, and there's going to be things happening all the time. One of the very first houses that I did had a poor ground, and they complained about things moving and all kinds of stuff happening. It was just the craziest amount of complaints I've ever seen. But as far as I know, when we found the ground problem, everything went away because there was no basic background EMF anymore.
Wow.
And by the way, I should also mention, EMF stands for electromagnetic field, not frequency.
Oh.
And the reason I'm even correcting you is because when you say frequency, you conjure up one frequency.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay?
Right.
A field may indeed be made up of tens of thousands of frequencies.
Frequencies, yeah. No, I'm glad you corrected me on that. No, I mean, that's absolutely correct. Because, I mean, even what they call the aura in the New Age community is our own electromagnetic field, which we have around us. It reflects how we feel, what kind of mood we're in. It affects our biases and preconceptions in our subconscious. It affects everything. And it either competes or coincides with the geomagnetic environment around us. So that's why you could be standing next to somebody in a Walmart and get a bad feeling about them.
Absolutely.
Something I don't like about that guy. That's our electromagnetic field. So I'm glad. Thank you for correcting me on that. I'm gonna have to remember that. We've got a couple of minutes left. I just want to make sure that we can get your information out. I'm going to check my handwriting and see how I do under vaccination here. But for Facebook, it's tom.conwell.3 for the books.
Yes.
That's on Facebook. So it's Facebook.com.conwell, CONWELL.3. Tom.conwell.3 for the books on Facebook. For Amazon, under your author name of Thomas W. Conwell, easier to find them on Amazon under that. Because they'll take you to Conroy's and they're trying to sell stuff there.
Sure.
And your email is Tom Conwell with one L. So it's T Conwell, but with one L. TCONWEL number 2 at NICAP.rr.com.
Right home.
All right. And these are for the books. Now, how long has the earthquake and UFO book been out now? When did you release that?
I think that was last May, I believe that came out.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. One of the things I did with that book, even though I told you I created maps, and there's probably 75 maps. The other thing I did is I have a UFO sighting map, and that map shows from 2011 through 2016 all of the UFO sightings that occurred within the United States, hotspots and everything else. And what I did was try to correlate that map with other maps of other things. Let me give you some ideas. Things like fault lines, mountain ranges, active inactive volcanoes, major magnetic anomalies in the earth, mineral resources, missing persons, giant reports, places where they found giants, Bigfoot map, Sasquatch sightings, and underground facilities.
Wow.
And I tried to put a copy of each of those maps within the book so that it would be obvious that if any of these maps had similarities to the UFO sighting reports, I may be able to draw some conclusions. I didn't find any particular map that did what my UFO sighting map would do. However, there were several of them, if you combined them, almost equaled my UFO sighting map. And I thought that was an interesting thing.
Wow, no, I think that's brilliant because it allows the reader to make up their own mind as to correlations and this and that. They have the information in front of them, and they can create their own arrows. You know, back. I think that's brilliant.
And after I did that, then I went back in and found straight line sightings of when I mapped the UFO sightings. After I had mapped the particular earthquake, and I was on a 2 or 3 day window, I found straight lines across the U.S. in various places where the sightings were seen.
Huh.
Well, now why would that happen?
Yeah, right.
And I investigated that and came to a really surprising conclusion on that one. So, yeah.
So we got to get to all right. We're out of time now.
Okay.
And because I'm streaming this from my end, at least on the video, I don't know if I end the stream and I lose you. And so if that's the case, it's been wonderful. In any case, it's been wonderful. I'm going to be contacting you because I want to have you back on this. But I don't know if we had audio problems within the program or not. So if that happened too,
I never noticed any.
Me and my vaccinated self, I would blame. So I'll just say that out loud. But we have to have you back anyway because you're just fascinating. Tom Conwell, thank you so much. Tim Roxbury, thanks for producing us. And Chip Reichenthal, thanks for doing your first production job. We'll see how good that ended up in a minute. But we're going to say goodnight because Circle of the Universe is coming up next, and you can't miss that. And, hey, if you like this beautiful shirt here, there we go. This Kindness Beyond the Veil T-shirt. If you're watching this, oh boy, I love it. You can get yourself WTRMradio.com in their shop department. All right, join us next week. Glenda Dawson, Larry Davidson will be our guest. We'll talk about Reiki, meditation, and all divine things. In the meantime, have a great week, everybody. We love you. And you're always welcome back here on Kindness Beyond the Veil. Tom Conwell, thanks again, my friend. This is Chip Reichenthal, loving you all, wishing you all well, health and happiness, and 1,000 smiles for every tear. See you next week, Monday, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on Kindness Beyond the Veil. Night, everybody, and thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Chip.
sing to us all.
Oh, oh, talk to me some more. You know that you don't have to go. You're the poetry man. You make things alright, yeah. Oh, oh, talk to me some more. You know that you don't have to go. You're the poetry man. You make things alright.